Using a positive memory that includes an experience of God's presence helps the initial steps in the Emmanuel approach process to be even more effective. I'm going to explain the two new pieces of brain science behind this observation, and then Charlotte and I will demonstrate. We will demonstrate again the initial steps of the Emmanuel approach process, up to the point of establishing an interactive connection with God, except that this time we will use a positive memory that includes an experience of God's presence. The first new piece of brain science is that our relationships are memory mapped. When I say that our relationships are memory mapped, I'm referring to the way in which our relationships with other people are carried in the memories for our past experiences with them. For example, I remember the first time I ever met Charlotte. I remember writing letters to her when I was in college. I remember talking to her on the phone every day during our long-distance courtship between Chicago and Portland, when our phone bill was the same size as our rent. I remember our wedding. I remember our honeymoon. I remember working together to fix up the different apartments we've lived in. I remember prayer times with her while driving on various long road trips. I remember hiking with her in Glacier National Park. I remember planting flowers together in our front yard garden. I have memories of washing dishes and working on a variety of other household tasks, as she read aloud through the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Chronicles of Narnia. I have memories of Charlotte and I spending time with family and friends, etc., etc., etc. I have thousands of memories of experiences with Charlotte, and our relationship is carried in these memories. If I deliberately recall, think about, and reconnect with these memories, this will activate the neurological circuits in my brain that carry my relationship with Charlotte, and thereby prepare my brain to connect with her in the present. In the same way, our relationships with God are memory mapped. Just as with other people, recalling, thinking about, and reconnecting with our memories for past experiences with God will activate the neurological circuits in our brains that carry our relationships with God, and thereby prepare our brains to connect with God in the present. Reconnecting with memory recreates just right conditions. And here's the second new piece of brain science. When we reconnect with the memory for an earlier experience, we are recreating, to some extent, the conditions that were present in our brains and minds when we went through the original experience. So when we reconnect with the memory for an earlier experience of connecting with God, we are recreating, at least to some extent, the same conditions in our brains and minds that were present in the original experience. Furthermore, we know that the conditions in the original experience were just right for perceiving and connecting with the Lord since it happened. And therefore, when we reconnect with and re-enter the memory for a previous experience of connecting with God, we are recreating, at least to some extent, the same brain and mind conditions that are just right for perceiving and connecting with the Lord. My observation is that the combination of recalling a previous good experience with Jesus, re-entering the memory, and then stirring up appreciation in this context provides an especially effective doorway, or platform, or bridge for establishing a living, interactive connection with Jesus in the present. It is a very small step from being inside of a memory of a previous experience of connecting with Jesus and feeling appreciation there, to being inside of this same memory and experiencing the presence of Jesus become living and interactive. And as mentioned in training segment number 1, after we have established an interactive connection with Jesus, we can pursue a variety of options for what to do with the rest of the session. We can just enjoy spending some additional time with Jesus, just hanging out in the positive memory together. We can ask Jesus a very simple follow-up question. Is there anything else that you have for me today, or that you want me to know today? We can receive comfort from the Lord. For example, by talking directly with Jesus about anything that is distressing us, and then receiving attunement from Jesus. That is, perceiving and feeling the truth that He is with us in our distress, that He is hearing us and understanding us, and that He cares about us and is glad to be with us. We can engage in intercessory prayer in the context of the Emmanuel Approach interactive connection. That is, we can focus on Jesus and just talk to Him directly regarding our intercessory prayer concerns. We can do spiritual direction. We can focus on Jesus and engage with Him directly as if He is a spiritual director. He's actually a very good spiritual director. We can do emotional healing work. We can go to a traumatic memory and then work with Jesus to resolve the trauma. Or we can pick an issue or question regarding which we would like some help and then look at and think about the issue or question with Jesus. So now Charlotte and I are going to show you what this looks like. What it looks like to go through the initial steps in the Emmanuel approach process to the point that the recipient has an interactive connection with God, except that this time we will use a positive memory that includes an experience of God's presence. To summarize very quickly, first, Charlotte will help me to find a positive memory and then help me to recall and reconnect with the details until I feel appreciation. And again, this time I'll use a memory that includes a connection with the Lord, to take advantage of the way in which our relationships are carried in our memories, and to take advantage of the way in which reconnecting with a memory for connecting with God will recreate, at least to some extent, the same conditions that worked for connecting with God in the original experience. Actually, I'm going to use the Grand Canyon Pentecost Summer Tanager memory from teaching segment number 1, except that I'm going to include, as part of the memory, the new piece at the end where I was able to perceive and connect with Jesus. As you saw in segment 1, this memory started out as just a beautiful nature memory. But now this beautiful nature memory includes a new Jesus piece at the end. And for this exercise, I'm going to include the new Jesus piece as the God connection part of the memory. When I am connected to the memory and feel appreciation, Charlotte will coach me to offer what I call the Emmanuel invitation and request prayer. She will coach me to pray something like, Jesus, I thank you that you are here with me in this memory, and I welcome your presence. Help me to perceive your living presence. Help me to make the transition from remembering you with me to perceiving you and connecting with you as a living, interactive presence. After I offer the Emmanuel invitation and request prayer, Charlotte will coach me to observe and describe whatever comes into my awareness. At this point in the process, I find that it is especially helpful to focus on Jesus' presence in the memory and notice whether his presence is still just a memory, like a picture in a photo album, or whether he has become alive, whether his presence in the memory has become living and interactive. Often this is clear immediately. I quickly sense something new, spontaneous, and surprising from Jesus, something that makes it abundantly clear that his presence is living and interactive. However, sometimes it's much more difficult to tell. In these situations, I find that asking a simple question, Jesus, how do you feel about being with me, can be very helpful. Usually, I can sense some kind of new, living response to this question, and this makes it clear that Jesus' presence in the memory is now living and interactive. Finally, as described earlier, once I have established an interactive connection with Jesus, there are a number of options for what to do with the rest of the session. For this demonstration, I'm going to ask Jesus the very simple follow-up question. Is there anything else that you have for me today? Or that you want me to know today? And again, we are pretending that Charlotte is a layperson beginner because we want to demonstrate what it looks like for a layperson beginner to use these tools. So most of what she says will be coming straight from the sample coaching words that are included in the handouts we use for our basic training exercises.
So the first step is to find a positive memory to recall and reconnect with. If you have a memory that includes experiencing God's presence, that would be ideal, but we can also just start with any positive memory. For example, a memory of getting a Christmas present you particularly enjoyed, a memory of a special experience from a family vacation, a memory of playing with a favorite pet, a memory of an especially positive time with friends, a memory of a beautiful nature experience, or a memory of thoroughly enjoying your favorite meal.
Okay, yeah, I have a memory. I'm going to use the memory from the Grand Canyon, the memory that we used for the demonstration for the first training segment, and that we upgraded so that now that memory it's a beautiful nature experience that also includes experiencing God's presence.
Okay. So now I want you to close your eyes, imagine yourself being back inside of that original experience, and describe the memory in as much detail as possible. So, for example, what did you see, hear, smell, taste, feel on your skin? What thoughts were you having at the time? What thoughts come as you think about it now? What emotions were you having at the time? What emotions come as you think about it now? How does your body feel? I want you to focus on and describe the details until you feel appreciation.
Yeah, so I'm remembering again our mule ride down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. We started really early in the morning. It was cool and clear up on the top of the rim of the Grand Canyon. That was just kind of fun and exciting, preparing to start the trip down. And the mules that was a neat experience. They were beautiful animals. It was fun just kind of interacting with and relating to and enjoying our animals we were riding. That was fun, and they were so beautiful. And just being able to and not have to even worry about watching the trail. They would watch the trail. We could just the whole trip down. We were just watching the scenery and the cacti and the flowers and the birds and the view. Just all the way down, we were just enjoying the grandeur of the Grand Canyon, and that was awesome in itself.
Mm.
Just thinking, when there were certain spots where the view would open up and it would be particularly spectacular. Looking up 2,000 feet up to the rim, to the top rim, looking down 3,000 feet down to the Colorado River, and there might be 5, 10, 15, 25 miles of these ginormous, huge formations of a billion years of geological strata exposed with the erosion of the Grand Canyon, and that was just the magnitude, the immensity, the picture. I mean, you can kind of get an idea from a picture, but you can't really feel it unless when you're halfway down the trail and you can see for 20 miles in both directions just these immense, spectacular, awesome formations, and just the magnitude and the hugeness. It just had it was awesome. That was a beautiful experience, just all the way down, enjoying the scenery. And then by the time we got to the bottom in the middle of the afternoon, it's like 105 degrees. We're hot and sweaty and dusty from being on the trail all day, and for the last couple hours it's 100 plus degrees. So we put our gear in the bunk room, and there was that beautiful stream, 100 feet away or something, pretty close to the sleeping cabins. So we got our swimsuits on, and my memory was just really chilly, cool, clear. It was clear, clean water, not kind of an old muddy stream. So we splashed around for a while, got all fresh and refreshed and clean and rinsed off. And there was this big rock right in the middle of the stream, and the whole stream was really not that big. Maybe the width of our living room. It might have been 12, 15 feet across. So we're sitting on this big rock in the middle of the stream. Each bank, each side of the stream is maybe 6 or 8 feet away. And after splashing around in the cold water, and rinsing off, it feels good to be sitting on this warm rock. It's like a warm sidewalk. Or the beach, when you play in the cold water and then you sit on the warm sand. And we're just sitting there and just enjoying the late afternoon and the sun is kind of getting that rich, more warm hue to it, and we're kind of thinking about the day and just remembering, just enjoying the scenery, and then this summer tanager, this bright red bird, and the juvenile is red, and it has some yellow and orange, so it's this red, yellow, and orange bird, and it doesn't just come down to the water for a couple of seconds to kind of drink for a moment and then wash a little bit. It hops along the banks of the stream right beside us, 6, 8 feet away, so close we could almost reached out and touched it. And it hops along, in the bushes here, and then over to the other side of the stream, and kind of hops on the rocks, the small rocks in the middle of the stream, and just stays right close to us for 10 or 15 minutes, which for a bird being that close, that's actually a long time. I've never seen a tanager, this family of bird. Usually they're way up in the treetops. I have never in my life, not before or since, my entire life of bird watching, have I seen a tanager behave like this. So that was we were both, I think I was probably the most appreciating, since I realized how this is just so unusual. And then at one point, as it's hopping around so close to us, it goes into this bush that just 6 or 8 feet to my right, just on the right side of the stream. There's this little bush right on the edge of the water, and it's hopping around in this bush for a couple minutes, and you say, "Oh, it's like the burning bush," and it's Pentecost. It was Pentecost Day, the day of this memory. It was actually Pentecost, and the stream we're sitting in is Bright Angel Creek, and you're saying, "Hey, it's kind of like the Holy Spirit is here with us. It's just like the burning bush." So that was the original beautiful nature memory. And then when we invited, okay, Jesus, we know you were there. We welcome your presence. Help me to perceive your presence here, for the first training segment demonstration. And then the first piece, I kind of have that sense of Jesus. He's a little bit of distance, sort of watching us, his face kind of to our right and up a bit, and he's kind of just watching our whole adventure. It's like watching your kids open a Christmas present. He's just really enjoying watching us just enjoy the creation somewhat. And even your thought about, hey, it's like the Holy Spirit's here with us. He's just enjoying that. And then when we did the piece where I said, Lord, help me to just enjoy being with you in this place. I had the sense that he's sitting to my left, and he and I were just quiet, just really calm and still. And we're not talking, it's almost like telepathy. We could sense and feel each other's thoughts and feelings, but we weren't talking at all. We were both just totally quiet and totally still, and just sitting there, just appreciating all the beauty in creation. And this is totally my favorite part of this whole memory now. Because one part that I mentioned is usually if I'm with somebody in nature, there's almost nobody I've ever been with that they want to sit and just enjoy all the details as long as I do. So I usually have noise in my head. Is this person, are they getting restless? Are they bored? Are they getting tired? Do they want to go somewhere else? And so pretty quickly, as I'm just enjoying the beauty, I start kind of also monitoring. I'm kind of watching the other people I'm with and kind of starting to kind of have a little, caring for them appropriately, but also kind of wondering and worrying whether they're, when do they want to move on? How long do they want to stay? Are they getting bored or tired? That kind of steals some of the joy. And I can feel with Jesus. I mean, part of the deal of being able to feel what he was sensing and feeling, kind of sharing his experience. I could feel totally. He's just completely. He doesn't need to be anywhere else. He doesn't want to be anywhere else. He's not restless. He's not getting bored. He's not tired. He's just totally happy to be there for as long as I want to stay. And he's enjoying being with me, and he's just sharing that experience in a way that I really don't ever get to do with other people. Or there's nobody else I'm ever with that there's such complete synchronization that I can. Well, there's nobody else I'm ever with where I can feel, and I can kind of. It's like I'm sharing his heart and mind to the extent where I know what he's thinking and feeling, so I can have. The depth of the sharing is really cool, adds to the beauty of it, and the complete lack of any kind of distraction or interference or worry. So that was all really special. And then that piece where I realized, as I kind of stayed with it for a bit, I could sort of feel, I could share his perception, his experience, and I'm realizing, oh, he can perceive, he can sense, he can know the creation in a way that's like beyond normal human. It's not just seeing the scenery and the trees and the flowers and hearing the birds. He was aware of all that, but he could sort of just sense and feel and perceive the whole fabric of creation. The whole ecosystem, how it all fits together, and there's a level. I mean, the more you know, the more elegant and profound, and the more you can appreciate the beauty. The more you know, the more you can appreciate it, and and how the opposite of the sort of the beginner naturalist who just takes 30 seconds. Oh, pretty trees, big rocks. Oh, wow, that's an awesome scenery, maybe for a minute or two. And then they want to go and do something else. And it's like Jesus and I, just the cloud formations and the geological layers of sedimentary history and the trees and the bushes and plants and flowers and lichens and mosses and the stream and the rocks and all the little invertebrates and insects and butterflies and little lizards that were fun, and even beyond that, somehow he can just sort of sense and feel how the whole fabric of creation kind of fits together and interacts, and the web of life. He can feel it. He can. It's more than just sort of the ecological theory. Somehow he can just directly perceive all that complexity and richness and beauty and creation. That was just really profound. That was so. Yeah, I definitely feel connected to the memory, and I feel really grateful, and I feel appreciation for that.
Okay. Okay. So now I want you to pray something like, Jesus, I welcome you to be with me in this memory. Help me to perceive your living presence. Help me to make the transition from remembering you with me to perceiving your presence as living and interactive.
Yes, Jesus, I do welcome you into this memory. I do ask you to help me to perceive your living presence. Help me to make that transition, to turn that corner from just remembering from enjoying this memory of your presence with me to actually perceiving you as living and interactive right here now with me in the memory.
And then as you're able, notice and describe everything that comes into your awareness, regardless of whether it feels important, makes sense, or is neatly packaged. Describe any perception of Jesus' living presence, any interactions with Jesus in detail.
Yeah, it's like I'm still really inside the memory. I'm in the same scene, and the visual imagery isn't really changing at all. And I'm still perceiving Jesus' presence. Like I can see, I still have I still see Jesus sitting to my left, but I'm not sensing him saying or doing anything new or different. Part of like the memory is we're just sitting there quietly, not doing anything. So it's hard to tell whether I'm still just in the memory for the experience from the demonstration from the first training segment, or whether I'm having a new experience with the living presence of Jesus. Like I'm wondering, am I having a new experience with Jesus, but it's just so similar to the earlier experience that it's hard to tell, or am I still just in the memory? It's really hard to tell for sure.
Well, okay, so I'd like you to ask Jesus, how do you feel about being with me? And if you are perceiving Jesus' living, interactive presence, then you'll sense a living, interactive response to your question.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so Jesus, how do you feel about being with me, Lord? There's just right away kind of a little sort of just a little head turn and kind of a smile, so I could perceive a little movement, a little living interaction there. But it's like he's having an experience very similar to mine, but in reverse. It's like I'm kind of feeling I feel like I'm kind of somewhat experience. I'm sharing his internal experience, and so I'm kind of perceiving his presence to my left and having these thoughts about, oh, it's so neat to be sharing this with somebody who's so on the same page, and I'm sensing it feels like I'm inside Jesus and he's perceiving me to his right. And it's like he's having a lot of the same thoughts. Like he really appreciates how much I can appreciate his creation, and he's enjoying sharing the experience with somebody who's so much on the same page. He's having the same thoughts. He can perceive like that, Carl's not bored or restless, that he can feel how I'm just so totally satisfied to just sit there. I don't need to say anything. I can just share the experience with him, and we're both kind of sensing each other's thoughts and feelings, and we're so much on the same page, and both appreciating that each of us are so just fully present and glad to be there and glad to be with each other and not somewhere else and not getting bored or whatever. Just that he's sharing all that same experience but in the other direction, which is kind of cool. So yeah, it's obviously clear now that his presence is living and interactive, and we're just sitting there I still can't get words. I've been trying for weeks, ever since the first segment demonstrations. I still can't get words that fully describe the way he can just sense the whole fabric of the web of life. And we're both just kind of sharing that and looking and seeing and perceiving the whole beauty, elegant, complex fabric of the ecosystem and the whole package of creation around us, and just enjoying that together. Yeah.
Okay, great. So now for the remainder of the session, I want you to ask Jesus is there anything else that you want me to know or that you have for me today? And then as you're able, notice and describe whatever comes into your awareness.
So my mind is kind of right away going to sort of work-related application of, Lord, what is there anything else you have for me today? Anything else you want me to know? I kind of prayed that in my head silently, and I was right away kind of going to, so is there anything you want me to know about how to be a better steward of all this Emmanuel approach stuff, how to teach more effectively, how to do my mentoring groups more effectively? Is there any way I can coach people more effectively? How can I raise up others who not only will be able to do it, facilitate for other people, but will be able to train and share? And how can I prepare better video and written material? And I'm thinking about my private practice patients, the ones that are stuck. Or is there anything you want me to know about what's in the way? Is there anything you want me to know about how to help them get unstuck and move forward more effectively? And I'm not perceiving like I don't perceive any response to any of that. It's like he's not talking to me about that. Like maybe kind of the sense that I kind of see a little flicker of a smile on his face, and maybe the thought, like, hey, I want you just to spend more time just enjoying being with me like this. Like he's saying to me, I think maybe he's saying he wants me to spend more time just hanging out in positive memories, like deliberately taking time to just enjoy being with him like this. I mean, he appreciates, like I sense he's pleased with how much I want to help other people have this experience, how much my passion for helping other people experience his living wonderful friendship presence. And like he likes how hard, I mean, he likes that I am so passionate about it and that I'm willing to work so hard to help other people do this. But it's like he doesn't want to talk about work stuff today. It's like he's telling me, he doesn't want to enable my tendency, my imbalance towards working too hard with too little rest. He's kind of like telling me, I want you to spend more time just enjoying being with me in positive memories like this. And he's demonstrating at the same time. And for example, like, that's why I'm not talking to you about, like, I'm not answering any of your questions because you want to talk about work. And I don't want to talk about work now. We're on break. Like, it's break time. Don't talk about work it's Sabbath time. And so he's kind of telling me that, and then sort of, for example, right now, he's sort of demonstrating the thing he's saying. He kind of gives me a little smile, a little flicker, like he knows all the same learning theory about explain to the left hemisphere, demonstrate to the right hemisphere, and go back and forth. So he thinks that's kind of is a little inside joke that. That I think that always kind of touches those memories of my childhood of not really having any friends. these little interactions where it feels like he kind of knows me so well that we have these little inside jokes. That's kind of fun. It's like he's sort of pointing out a data point supporting his argument's not the right, his observation that I need to that I tend towards working too hard with not enough breaks, and that it would be acceptable or appropriate. It would be good for me to spend more time just enjoying being with him. And he's like, I think he's sort of bringing into my mind, he's pointing out a data point that sort of supports his assessment, his observation. This is actually kind of a little embarrassing, but that the demonstration we did for the first training segment, that was the first time I've ever actually done this myself. And I teach about it, that this is one of the things that the Lord often likes to do with people. And I encourage other people to do it. And I've coached lots of people to do this, often some way, but in different settings. I'll say, hey, just take a few minutes to just enjoy being with Jesus in the positive memory. But the demonstration for the first training segment, that was the first time I ever actually did it myself. And there's some part of me that's like, hey, but it's not as bad as it looks, right? I mean, there are all the different Emmanuel activities I do are sort of, include some enjoying being with Jesus. I love helping other people to connect with Jesus. That's such a profoundly satisfying experience. And being with somebody else when they're having a profound experience of Jesus' presence, that's kind of a indirect form of enjoying being with Jesus. I'm sure the disciples loved watching him heal people. That would have been a really cool, that would have been a profoundly enjoyable experience of being with Jesus, to be standing right next to him when he heals somebody's kid. So it's like, it's a form of enjoying being with Jesus, to be with somebody else when they're experiencing some kind of cool healing. When I'm coaching a session and the recipient is having a profound, beautiful experience with Jesus, that's kind of cool. And like with my own healing work, at the beginning of each session, when you start with a positive memory and you connect with Jesus in a positive memory, there's a minute. And actually, to be totally honest, I'm usually kind of in a hurry. I'm trying to I'm trying to get the most healing accomplished. So I usually kind of go through all that in about 1 minute. But there's still 28 seconds of just sort of touching the positive memory with Jesus and kind of enjoying that for a few moments. And then at the end of each healing session, after I'm in some painful memory, I'm working with Jesus, and after the memory is healed, then it's not a painful memory anymore. It's like there's a couple minutes at the end when you're just cleaning up splinters, and it's kind of halfway. It's sort of an enjoyable, most of the work is done. The memory mostly is like, hey, this is a place where I'm just sensing Jesus' attuning, loving, healing, powerful, wonderful, wise presence. And we're just picking up a few splinters. And that's kind of somewhat work, but it's somewhat enjoyable, when the memory once upon a time traumatic, now it's a healed memory, and now it's just a place where I experience Jesus. That's kind of a form of enjoying being with Jesus. But none of these, but it's also, it's true that all those other Emmanuel approach activities aren't quite the same as deliberately, explicitly the explicit purpose, or we're deliberately the activity for today is to go to a positive memory and just spend time enjoying being with Jesus, like I did in the first training segment. That's, I mean, all those other things aren't quite the same as that. And he's just pointing out to me, like, hey, a point in my favor. I'm speaking as Jesus, is like that the first training segment demonstration. That was the first time you ever did that. That's kind of an interesting data point, Carl. It's kind of he's sort of maybe kidding me, a little quirky smile, and he's sort of a funny thought, or not bad teasing, sort of a on my side friendly kind of kidding. He's pointing out, like he's saying, he would like me to spend more time just enjoying being with him. And the funny thought is, so more would not really be that difficult. I mean, so far, I've done that once for 15 minutes in 60 years. So he's kind of kidding me a little bit. It's like, hey, it's not asking for that much to do, like more than 15 minutes every 60 years. It's not a high bar. Which is, it's kind of funny. I mean, it's good natured, the kind of way friends will kind of kid each other. And I think that also kind of resonates and kind of touches those kid memory places where I didn't have any friends. And I don't know if some people might feel like this is sort of outrageous or kind of heretical, but it's like there's a vulnerable, like you see some romantic comedy movie, or just if they get to the place where they actually are vulnerable enough to just say, hey, I really like you. That when they vulnerably put their heart out there and say, I would like to be with you. Do you want to be with me? Kind of, it's sort of this real poignant, vulnerable. Like he kind of saying to me and to all of us, I really enjoy being with you, and I miss you, and I wish you would spend more time with me. Could you please spend more time just being with me? And that feels, I don't know if some people will think that's Jesus being too human or something, but it feels, at the moment at least, it feels like that's Jesus, and he's just sort of being real, just undefended, transparent, vulnerable about, like, asking, almost pleading with all of us to, like, hey, I really like being with you, I enjoy being with you, I miss you, I wish you would all spend more time just enjoying being with me. Yeah, kind of feels very poignant and personal and connected and relational and vulnerable, and that there's a whole supplementary chapter now on the website version of the book about the number one priority of all this Emmanuel approach stuff is increasing our intimacy with Jesus. And it's like, yeah, there's a whole chapter about that point, and he's kind of nodding and like, yeah, right, good, right, that's why I encourage you to write that whole chapter, Carl, because that's actually a pretty big point. He's just kind of like, oh wow. It's kind of, it feels like he's like, yeah, he feels like I've heard. He's smiling and nodding, like if you had a classroom of students and you explain something and it's like, okay, yeah, you actually listened. Yes, you actually heard what I had to say, and you've actually been listening, and you were paying attention, and you got it. Yeah, you actually got the point there. Kind of a grin, kind of this little, slightly humorous smile. I'm thinking maybe maybe this would be a good place to close for our demonstration. For the demonstration purpose, maybe this would be a good place to close. And then after we get done with the demonstration, I'll actually do what he's asking me to do. I can come back and spend some more time just enjoying being with him in this memory after we kind of finish the demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So there you go. That's what it looks like to go through the initial steps of the Emmanuel approach process, using a positive memory that includes experiencing the Lord's presence. And that's what it looks like after getting the interactive connection in place, to just coach the recipient, ask the Lord, God, is there anything else you have for me today? Is there anything else you want me to know today? So thank you, sweetheart, for helping me with another demonstration.
You're welcome.
Love you.
Love you.
As explained earlier, if you have positive memories that include an experience of God's presence, then using those memories will provide additional benefits. From the way in which our relationships are carried in our memories, and from the way in which reconnecting with a memory will recreate, at least to some extent, the conditions from the original experience. However, if you do not yet have positive memories that include a connection with God, you can just use any positive memory. And then you can use the initial steps in the Emmanuel approach process to upgrade your non-God positive memory to an Emmanuel positive memory, like I did in segment 1 with the Grand Canyon Pentecost Summer Tanager memory. Also, I want to remind you that this basic Emmanuel approach process does not always work right away for everybody. The good news is that if the process does not work for you, it just means that there are blockages in the way. And when you resolve the blockages, you will consistently be able to perceive God's presence and be able to establish an interactive connection with God. So let me close with a prayer. Lord, we thank you again for your Emmanuel promise and for the wonderful good news Emmanuel truth that you are always with us, that you are always glad to be with us, and that you always want to connect with us. Help us to use these simple tools to become aware of your wonderful, living Emmanuel presence and to establish an interactive connection with you. And we thank you that you always have gifts and blessings for us. Help us to recognize and receive them. Amen. Amen. Bless you.